Welcome to Textual Anthologies, the podcast series that explores the personal and professional side of creative individuals. My name is Massimo Casagrande, and in this first series, I will be focusing on the slash culture. Today's creative boundaries are blurred more than ever, and with this series, we will explore how the creative industry and creative people are influenced and inspired by other disciplines. Over the next few episodes, I will be having informal conversations with friends, colleagues and fellow slashers to discover more about their stories, their journey, what makes them tick, and above all, their creative outlets. Enjoy the episode. With today's guest, we talk about the moving image, in particular video and film. Our guest is a consultant, film festival strategist and publicist focusing on fashion, lifestyle and contemporary culture. He built his experience in fashion film as one of the founding members of the Berlin Fashion Film Festival, and since 2016, he has been consulting brands, production companies and film directors in the creation and distribution of video content across a range of publications and film festivals. Today, I meet up with him to talk about this aspect of the creative industry and discover what it takes to create a film festival, how he works with creatives and helps distribute their work, and what lies ahead for the future of video. I'm happy to welcome today's guest, Niccolo Montanari. Hi Niccolo, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast today. I really appreciate your time. As we mentioned, this podcast is talking to people who work in the creative field, and it's exploring the creative process that these individuals have and also exploring different disciplines within creativity, not just related to fashion, the arts. In your case, you're a video and a filmmaker, so I would like to find out more about you.
I'm not actually a director myself. I tend to work with filmmakers and directors to help them promote. But I don't, unfortunately, and not yet. I don't make films myself yet.
You never know. You never know. I always start off by asking my guest, as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Many things. In fact, I actually didn't know what I wanted to be until. Sometimes I still wonder if I'm going to be changing what my profession is. I think at one point I wanted to be a veterinarian just because I enjoy working with, just enjoy being around animals a lot. And then at one point I kind of thought about working as a journalist, which kind of is on track with what I'm doing, but it just changed a lot. I had a lot of interests, I guess, so that kind of helped me diversify what I wanted to get experience in.
Great. Well, I guess you can cover all of these topics with the films, working with video as well. So you can film animals,
It's a bit different from, we haven't really come up. There have been fashion films working with, animals. I think there was one by Gucci. But generally it's not the main topic.
So I know you're a co-founder of the Berlin Fashion Film Festival. Is that correct?
Yep. I started it in 2012.
Wow.
If I'm correct, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I started it when I was living in Berlin. I started it with a friend of mine. We were running an events management agency for young fashion designers, and this was one of the projects that we just started to work on. I was quite young and we didn't really know what was possible, but at that age you kind of feel like you can do whatever, and especially in Berlin at the time, people would give you locations not for free but for a reasonable price, and so it was kind of not easy, but it was easier than in other places, I suppose. I don't think I could have done it. I definitely couldn't have done what I did in Berlin in London.
Wow. But it's grown the festival a lot in these, 8 years that it's been going?
Yeah, basically it was a big challenge just because we were running the agency and the festival simultaneously, and then at one point, and then I also had another full-time job because obviously festival didn't really bring money in.
The day job.
Yeah, I think working in the creative industry, a lot of us have experienced that, having to have a day job and to grow yourself, and because you have a passion for it. But so I think year after year we kind of learned what we were doing. At the time there wasn't much going on in terms of platforms providing a place for fashion films, so people were really excited about it. And so when we started it with Lisa Filippini, the co-founder, I think there was just a Shade of You on fashion film at the time.
Yes.
La Jolla in States. that were doing fashion films or hosting, let's say, fashion films. And then over the years it grew, and then I left in 2016, and now it's actually something different. It's someone else took it on. His name is Philip Ulita, and then he decided to move away. He's like fashion film is still included in what he curates and what he programs, but he moved into more commercial field. So there's a lot of music videos, advertising.
So it's evolved as a festival and as a platform.
It's evolved as a festival and as a platform. Yeah, exactly.
How easy is it to create a film festival? And also, back in 2012, I guess film wasn't as big as it is now. I mean, I know, in 2000, Nick Knight started show studios and there was sort of this gradual growth. But like, how do you start a film festival and how do you get people to participate?
We kind of noticed there was a trend. There was, working with designers, we kind of noticed that a lot of, in 2011, 2010, 11, we started working with designers who, instead of doing presentations, wanted to show their collection through video. And then we started doing some research into it. And then we were like, okay, this might be interesting to showcase as as standalone pieces as part of a bigger program. And then we talked to a few people. We were thinking like, okay, maybe we could just do it as part of Berlin Fashion Week. And then we spoke to some more people and they were like, you should do something bigger. How about a festival focused on fashion films? And then they kind of like, okay, and then we kind of like learned as we went along. We were like, okay, what do we need? We need like a location. We need to understand who we were inviting. We need to understand who we're talking to. Is it directors? Is it brands? Is it filmmakers? People were really confused. I think people were confused about the term fashion film because I remember that was one of the main issues we had when securing sponsorship. It was kind of like if you spoke to people to do with fashion brands and everything, they would be like, well, but it's a film event, so why are we supposed to get involved? But if you spoke to people involved in film industry, they would be like, it's a fashion event, so it's got nothing to do with us. So it's a tricky one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Trying to convince both parties to take part is difficult.
Yeah, because people people will still ask me like, what is a fashion film? And I remember talking to we were part of a panel at Fashion Clash Fashion Film Festival a few years ago, and there was one of the panelists, Catherine Ferguson, who's done a lot of great work with Selfridges in the UK in the past. She was one of the she used to run the sort of fashion film scheme, I want to call it. It's probably a better word for it, but so she used to sort of direct the main sort of films coming out of Selfridges, and she said on this panel that fashion film as a genre was a lot more defined a few years ago, as you said, with Nick Knight talking and Diane Pernet sort of talking, Nick Knight talking specifically about how fashion film is something that should be focused on the clothing because the narrative lies in the clothing rather than in the narrative of the film. And so people would be like, oh, fashion film is a film about, a specific collection, or it's a film about, it's an experimental piece about like, the designer. But whereas now, it's very hard to define what fashion film is because you will have like a, hybrid music video / fashion films or like longer pieces of narrative work that will be very stylistically in line with the fashion film genre. So that's what makes it exciting, but that's what makes it, tricky to explain and to understand, I think.
Absolutely. And also it's like the relationship between the designer and the audience. How does the audience or the consumer relate to the brand through a moving image? How does a brand carry its DNA through video?
And I think there's a lot of old ways of thinking when it comes to that. I think a lot of brands and other people were working, for example, in the marketing department. I mean, it's changing a little bit, but that can still see that kind of approach of, but how is this going to help us sell the items? And sometimes I have to be like, it's not the consumers and us and your younger generations as well are not really open to a form of advertising. It's trying to sell you something. An advert on TV. They want to sort of get in line with the brand. They want to engage with the brand because the values, because of what's behind it. Sometimes they don't even want to see that, there's a name or a logo behind it. But I think, that varies from country to country, but I think I would still have a little bit of work when it comes to educating people as to what video content can do for brands.
I remember being in 2009 in Paris to see, well, unfortunately, it was his last show before he passed away, the McQueen. And Nick, it was like and I remember like Lady Gaga had just launched her Bad Romance album. And so there was the single going, there was this video, but then there was this huge mechanical arm over the audience. It was kind of filming it.
And it just felt like so bizarre, like how, I can't describe it, but it just felt, wow, it was this amazing experience. These videos on the catwalk, and then you would see the models and this huge arm just sort of floating over all of us, capturing everything. It was like so spectacular. And then, Nick Knight is a genius when it comes to these things. But like since then, everything has evolved with fashion films. And I know you were mentioning earlier that it's more about video content now rather than just fashion. It's sort of evolved, correct?
Yep, I think so. I think, especially with what I work with, it's generally not necessarily like a stereotypical experimental narrative without any sort of narrative fashion film. It tends to be something that people can. I guess there's a story behind it. There's some form of emotional engagement with the piece. It's not. It doesn't tend to be so. I mean, I don't want to say abstract because you do sometimes get really emotionally engaging abstract pieces. But I think it's kind of we moved on from that kind of person walking in a field without any sort of like aim, just looking pretty. I think it's trying to do something else, and it's rightly so. And I think it's great that a lot of directors are kind of starting to work with other people, whether it's other experts in their fields, whether it's dance and music, to come up with something new and exciting that will be able to sort of create a bit of engagement. I think.
Yeah.
And I think that people are becoming very aware of this kind of need to stay afloat and stay relevant, because people's attention. I mean, not to get into all the sort of marketing talk and stuff, but like people's attention span is like it is what it is, and people are not, including myself, people are not really will look at something and move on to the next thing. So
absolutely.
pushing things forward, I think.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of attention span, I mean, do you think social media is a big sort of instigator in the fact that, you've got the 15-second stories and your Instagram lives are maybe like a minute long or something like that? Do you find that social media or the social media platforms have changed the way video is moving forward, or how video is perceived by audiences?
Yeah, I think so. I think obviously social media has played a huge part in how we watch stuff, which consume content, and how we get to know a brand, how we get to know people. I think I'm guilty of that. The first thing I do is like, check, the sort of Instagram and reach that people have and see how that's kind of how they engage with their audience. And for example, one of the directors that I work with, she told me that sometimes when she doesn't see clients, they actually explicitly say to her that to her Instagram, and they see that she has a big following, and that that her audience is in line with their audience, which means that like they're able to pick her, not because they like her aesthetic. I mean, just also because they like her aesthetic, but also because they know that she's speaking to a specific audience that is in line with their audience. It becomes very complicated because not only do you have to become that you have to be like a director, but you also have to be this person that an extrovert up to a point where is engaging with the people and talking to the people, and we're building a network, and building a network obviously, but also creating this kind of like following, and it's a lot.
It's a lot of pressure as well. Do you have the following? Do you have the numbers? Do you have the engagement? So when you work on projects, is one of the first things that you and your team think about is, okay, how's this going to work on social media? Or do you just work on a project and then does social media become a second part of the equation? Because everything now is just about social media. Like even when we talk with brands and kids, it's like all they are interested in is the Instagram or the TikTok or whatever. So I'm thinking, how does it work with video and film?
I don't like to think that like the first thing we have to think about is social media, because like I don't think that puts a certain limit to what can be done. I think especially I tend to work on less commercial pieces. I tend to work on personal projects that directors use to promote themselves and their work, because if you work for a brand, you have to work within a specific frame and you have certain limitations. But if you work on your own projects, you can do whatever you want, and that's when you get the most exciting projects, because like they really show their skills and what they can do. So I think when, from my personal experience with the projects that I work on that are not particularly commercial, then the sort of social media aspect of it is less important. When it comes to a more commercial piece, then obviously, how people are going to view it and how people are going to react to it on social media plays a bigger aspect, because there's a clearer aim to what you want to do. You want this video to do,
Sure. And you mentioned before about collaborations and working with different people. And there's this one project I really enjoyed for Art Basel. I think it was Art Basel last year, 2019, where Gucci, Alessandro Michele teamed up with Harmony Korine and Snapchat. And Snapchat came up with these like glasses. So Harmony Korine actually filmed these little mini videos wearing the Snapchat glasses and playing with these Snapchat filters, which was really, really cool. It was quite nice. And it was nice to see how you had these three, you had Gucci, Harmony Korine, and Snapchat sort of work together, three different people or three different entities kind of merging to create this one project. And it was really, really nice to also see people.
These kind of collaborations happen all the time. There was also the Björk one that I think it was Andrew Thomas Wang and Björk and Alessandro Michele actually, that they did the latest, not the latest, but like one of the last music videos for Björk as well. So there's a lot of that happening, I think.
And then also now with the pandemic, again, Alessandro Michele, I loved what he did with the campaign, which he called Gucci Rituals, where he sent the clothes to the models and they just filmed themselves in their house. Again, that was so nice, because it's just a different way of a brand moving forward with the times, and also the way it's communicating with its audience during this pandemic.
I think there was a lot of I don't know if it's old news, I guess, but like a few years ago, I remember people started, well, no, not even that long ago, maybe last year, but like at different talks, people would be saying that like brands would be so scared generally to sort of have their brands messed up with, like, oh, don't touch my logo, don't do anything with that, and this is the way it's supposed to look. But then actually what people started realizing is that what's happening is that the sort of users, the sort of social media users, are playing with it and making something themselves with it. And the sort of smarter brands realized that there was a lot of potential in that, and sort of like giving the power back to the followers and getting them to play with it and engage with it. And that's how, rather than just say like, buy this, they were like, do something with it, see what you can come up with,
And I think that's nice, because it gives the consumer a way of seeing how you can sort of personalize the brand.
Yeah.
So that's quite nice. Speaking of pandemic, everything's been disrupted. Fashion weeks, we've had digital fashion weeks and so forth. But how has the film festival been disrupted? I mean, I know we've just finished the Venice Film Festival, but how is the film industry and the film festival sort of dealing with the pandemic? Are they still going forward with events, or is everything moved onto a digital platform?
I reckon, I would say most of, I don't think most of them, but like a big part of the film festivals have decided to opt for a sort of digital presence. A few have postponed, and another sort of portion has decided to do a half, a little like a small sort of live element to it. So like a live screening for a selected few people, plus and a bigger sort of online presence. But having said that, I did actually go to one. I did attend. So Berlin Fashion Film Festival has become Berlin Commercial. And they did their edition in August. So I was hosting a panel, and then they managed, because in Germany these sort of restrictions were not as tight because their numbers were not as high. So we did manage to sort of have to meet people, which was super nice, because I think like the whole point of like events and networking and all of that, and it's actually to get to know them. I think the digital is nice. I mean, I'm a huge fan of like doing something digitally, because from watching films to connecting with people to sharing and everything. But I think you can't really replace the sort of human aspect.
Absolutely.
Talking to someone, and especially I think when it comes to fashion, I think like, I don't know, you obviously know more. Have a better opinion on this than I do, but like, when it comes to seeing clothing, one thing is watching it on a screen, another thing is seeing it move. And
absolutely. And then, Fashion Weeks also, it isn't just about the show. There's like so much around it, isn't it? Like the events, there's the build up to it, and the connecting, the networking, and that I think
it's the same with the film festivals as well.
Exactly. It's like you're saying, people meeting and actually communicating. The humanization is absolutely, it's so important. But it's been interesting to seeing from my side, from the fashion point, how brands have been pushing themselves to think out of the box, to show and create this digital video content. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, I think brands are really having to, because it's kind of disrupting the way, like it's kind of maybe not necessarily, I guess it's disrupting, but it's also kind of, maybe it was going to happen anyway, but like it's moving. This pandemic has sped up things.
Absolutely.
You know, has made people think like, okay, like we have to come up with something now. We can't really think about digital. We can't really think about digital strategy in like 6 months or 7 months. We have to think about it now.
Absolutely, yeah. Things have definitely been accelerated thanks to the pandemic. So, what are your thoughts on the whole trend of augmented and virtual reality?
I mean, I can only speak from my own experience, and I did see last year before the lockdown and everything that a lot of film festivals started including that as a category.
Oh.
So they were kind of encouraging filmmakers and directors to submit their sort of virtual reality work, and rather than, because obviously to submit to most film festivals you have to pay a submission fee, but for these specific projects often they wouldn't have a fee at all, because it really, it was something that was on the up, and something that was, they would have like these sort of virtual reality stations, but you could try out different things. So yeah, I think last year was definitely having a moment. I think everything is kind of like not stopped, I don't know, but like I feel like in terms of news, everything is being overshadowed a little bit by the lockdown and being able to do things during lockdown. So hopefully it's going to pick up again, and hopefully there are still projects that are developing in this kind of way. But definitely I feel like even the panels that I did like this summer, it was in August, it was very much about like lockdown content, because people, especially from in the sort of video industry, you need to film things. How do you film things? How do you, if you can't meet people?
Exactly.
So they were kind of like how, as Gucci did, it was very much about like giving, whether it's people filming themselves at home, whether it's, editing pieces, content that has already been published, or pieces of something that you filmed in the past and you're just re-editing.
Sure.
So it's kind of coming up with,
I mean, I know, again, from a fashion point of view, sort of photographers was shooting either, from FaceTime or through Zoom, and then they would sort of direct the model. And I wonder if maybe some filmmakers did that as well, filming directly from their computers,
Yeah. That's one of the directors that I worked with. She, this wasn't because of lockdown. Her name is Anna Rachenko. But she was pregnant, so she was in London, and the music video that she was shooting was in Canada. So she had someone on location, a co-director, and she would be directing from Zoom. So it's something that like I think it's not as unusual as it used to be.
What do you think is the future of video?
It's a tricky one, because I think I recently listened to a podcast which was focused on TikTok, just because it's a new platform and people are talking about it and there's a lot of hype around it. And I personally find it super interesting. I don't make stuff, but I watch a lot of things on TikTok because you can find some very funny things.
It's so addictive.
It's very addictive, and also like I'm just very interested in how things. Whereas with Snapchat, I never really could like. I just got bored eventually, but like with TikTok, I'm interested in seeing how people are engaging with it. And I think I think it's kind of going on the trend of, as we were saying, like of people creating stuff. So what was interesting about that podcast specifically is that what people find hard generally is to start something from, to come up with an idea and to execute that idea.
Yeah.
But what TikTok does very well is that it lets you sort of rip off other people's ideas. So, there's a trend, and then you build up on that trend, and you build up on that trend even more, and then sort of like it becomes something that like, kind of resembles what it started off with.
Sure.
It's very different. So I think there's that kind of being able to almost collaborate with people that you don't know and create new and amazing video content in that kind of way. And what I find interesting about that platform specifically is how brands are using it, because it's very hard to use it to it's not like Instagram. In Instagram, you can still make, you get adverts and you get, product placement, influencers, all of that. But TikTok doesn't really work like that.
Yeah.
So I think like this one, for example, one account, Red Bull, does like a lot of works on TikTok because they sort of film a lot of like crazy people doing crazy stuff.
Oh wow, Red Bull.
Yeah, I think they have a they've always been very good at like sort of event marketing. So like that's that thing. It's just like trying to sort of like rather than doing they probably do adverts as well, but they're really trying to sort of engage with the people by like sponsoring events and sponsoring these kind of like which is in line with our brand. So I think in that kind of way, to answer your question, where is video going? I think there's definitely going to be that collaborative element to how people consume things. And so from being just a consumer, you also become a creator, and people are going to be expected to be able to do a bit of that as well.
Oh, that's nice. I like that. Everybody contributes to the brand. I think that's really nice.
Yeah, let's see. I think it's good, but it also puts a lot of pressure on people because now before you used to be able to just be one thing, a photographer or director. Or editor,
yes.
Now you're supposed to do like, as we were saying, like you have to wear many hats and you have to be quite good at all of them.
Pressure. Like so much pressure nowadays on being good at everything. It's stressful. Niccolo, also, were you involved with the Canadian International Film Festival, or were you just a guest? Because I remember seeing a video where you were interviewed, but
no, I wasn't. I wasn't part of the sort of organizing team, but I was a jury member. I think for a couple of years, and then it got the three people that were running it stepped down, and someone else stepped in to sort of take over and sort of rebrand the festival and move it from Calgary to Toronto. And so we started talking, and then we just did a Q&A together.
Oh, okay. Well, a question about being part of the jury. How easy or difficult is it to select a winner? Because I guess video is like art. It's so subjective, isn't it? So what makes one video stand out more than the other?
Yeah, like you said, I don't think it's not an objective. There's no sort of final view on a specific video because you can't be there's no absolute on something. So I think that's kind of why when you, as a film festival director, what you're supposed to do is put a jury together that's formed by people in different fields. So whether it's someone that has a cinematographer as opposed to as an editor, as opposed to someone a journalist, so that that the films can be assessed from different angles. I guess the way I would go generally when I look at something, when I have to go through a lot of content, a lot of videos, I just like you said, it's very subjective. So I look for things that are well made, things that are emotionally engaging, and things that really bring something new to the conversation. I know it seems like such a cliche thing to say, but it's kind of like because you see so much, you kind of realize what's being done and obviously as creators you're so passionate about your project and sometimes you forget that there's loads of people doing the same thing as you are at the same time. So I try and look for things that are, are kind of current and contemporary in the sense, especially with all the conversation that we're talking when it comes to whether it's ageism or diversity or representation, all those kind of themes. I also take those into account because I think it's something that you do have as a creator, I think you do also have a responsibility.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people differ. Not everyone agrees with me on that. But I know as a creator, you do have a responsibility to be aware of what's going on and to try and make a change and be part of that change.
I always say, if you've got a platform, you need to use it well and educate as well through it sometimes because. And like you said, we're bombarded with so many images and so many things that it's nice to find someone who can actually communicate and touch you, and make your way of things. Just one last question before we finish. Are you working on any new projects at the moment? Anything that you're allowed to tell us about?
Yes, that's something that should be coming out in mid-October. I'm just waiting for the fashion weeks to end before I can actually have a bit of space. So one of the directors that I've been working with for the past few years, her name, as I said, is Anna Radchenko, and she's a director. She makes films, but she also is a photographer. So she's soon going to be launching a set of photos that she's been working on because she's recently become a mother.
Okay.
And she wanted to sort of, the whole thing is how in Russia, as well as in many other countries, but specifically in Russia, because she's Russian, after a certain age, you're seen as a woman. You're not seen as valuable anymore if you're not if you're childless, which is is something that she kind of felt very much on her own skin. And so she did a series of photos where she cast 3 or 4 older women, so in their 80s, and then she worked with a lot of up and coming as well as established Russian designers. And she sort of did a series of photo shoot combined with a fashion film that's going to be released around mid-October.
Oh, wow. Please share details so I can post about it as well. I'd love to find out more about that.
That would be great.
Awesome. Niccolo, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. I look forward to inviting you next week to our next episode. So stay tuned, stay safe, and speak soon. Bye.